Filing for Social Security at 62 will permanently cut your monthly check by 30%. That reduction never goes away. And yet, depending on who you are and what your life actually looks like, that 30% reduction might be the price of the smartest financial decision you make in retirement. The conventional advice is simple. Wait. Every year, you delay past your full retirement age locks in 8% more benefit per year. Hold on until 70, and you're collecting 124% of what you would have received at 67. That difference is real money. On a full retirement benefit of $3,800 per month, claiming at 62 drops you to roughly $2,660. Waiting until 70 pushes that same benefit up to about $4,700 a month. That's a gap of over $2,000 every single month for the rest of your life, and the mainstream retirement media will never let you forget it. So why would anyone file early? Close to half of all Americans do claim before their full retirement age. The standard narrative calls that a collective mistake, as if millions of people simply failed to understand how the math works. But that's a lazy conclusion. Many of those people ran the numbers, assessed their actual circumstances, and arrived at a deliberate choice. Some of them were wrong. A significant portion of them were right. What I'm going to walk you through today are 7 specific, legitimate scenarios where claiming Social Security at 62 is the correct move. I'll also show you the situations where filing early is a genuine mistake. And I'll cover a couple of lesser-known rules that change the calculus in ways most people never hear about. This is not a decision that should be made based on broad rules that apply to an imaginary average person. It's a decision that should be made based on the actual details of your life. If this kind of analysis is what you're looking for, consider subscribing. We break down decisions like this one every single day. Before we get into the 7 reasons, let's lock in the break-even math, because this is the framework every filing decision rests on. For anyone born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. File at 62 and you're claiming 5 years early, which triggers that permanent 30% reduction. File at 70 and the delayed retirement credits push your benefit to 124% of your full amount. Using the $3,800 monthly benefit from our earlier example, the spread between an early claim at 62 and a maximum delayed claim at 70 is roughly $2,040 every single month. That number gets cited constantly to discourage early filing. What gets cited far less often is what it actually takes for the delayed strategy to win. If you compare claiming at 62 versus waiting until 67, the break-even point lands around age 78. Meaning if you claim early and die before 78, you received more total dollars from Social Security than you would have by waiting. Compare 62 to 70, and the break-even shifts to approximately 80 to 81. Compare 67 to 70, and you're looking at roughly age 82 before the delay pays off. The Social Security system was deliberately designed this way. Benefit levels are calibrated so that people who reach average life expectancy collect roughly the same lifetime total regardless of when they filed. The monthly amounts differ. The lifetime total is supposed to even out, which means the only variables that actually change the outcome are how long you live, what else is happening in your financial life, and what your household situation looks like. That's exactly what the 7 reasons address. Each one represents a real circumstance where those variables shift the math away from waiting. The first scenario, and one of the most strategically underappreciated, involves your spouse. Your spouse cannot collect spousal benefits until you have filed for your own retirement benefits. That's a hard rule with no workaround. If your spouse has limited work history or significantly lower earnings record, they may be eligible for up to 50% of your full retirement age benefit, but only after you file. Every month you delay your filing is a month your household goes without that additional income. When people optimize their Social Security decision in isolation, focused purely on their own individual benefit, they can inadvertently reduce their family's total income for years at a stretch. Consider a household where one spouse has a strong earnings history and the other spent years out of the workforce raising children or working part-time. If the higher earner waits until 70 to file, the lower earner waits those same additional years to receive any spousal benefit at all. The higher earner's monthly check will eventually be larger, but the household has sacrificed years of combined income to get there. Running the numbers on the household total, not just the individual optimization, sometimes points directly toward an earlier filing date than either spouse expected. Which brings us to the second scenario, because once you've accounted for the household picture, the next consideration is one most retirement calculators ignore entirely: your actual health history. The average 62-year-old in the United States can expect to live somewhere between 81 and 84 years, depending on gender and health profile. That's the statistical average for people who have already survived to 62. But averages are built from two halves. Half of that group lives longer. The other half does not make it that far. If your family history includes parents and grandparents who passed away in their late 60s or mid-70s, if you're managing serious chronic conditions today, or if your doctor has had frank conversations with you about long-term health risks, the break-even math changes dramatically in favor of claiming early. Waiting until 70 only pays off if you live past 80 to 81. If your honest, realistic assessment of your own longevity puts that outcome in doubt, the larger monthly check you'd collect by waiting might be a benefit you never fully use. This isn't pessimism. It's the same kind of honest accounting that shapes every other financial decision. You buy car insurance calibrated to your driving situation. You size your emergency fund based on your actual job stability. Your Social Security filing decision deserves the same realistic lens. The third scenario layers on top of this, and it applies specifically to married couples, where there's a meaningful difference in health outlook between spouses. When one spouse dies, the surviving spouse can switch to the deceased spouse's benefit if it's larger. That's the survivor benefit, and it's one of the most powerful income protection tools in the entire Social Security system. The survivor benefit is based on what the deceased spouse was actually receiving at death, which means the timing of when that spouse filed directly determines the survivor's income for the rest of their life. Here's how a coordinated strategy can work. If the lower earning spouse has health concerns suggesting a shorter life expectancy, that spouse files at 62 and begins collecting on their own record. The higher earning spouse delays filing to build up the largest possible benefit. When the lower earning spouse passes away, the survivor switches to the higher earner's record, collecting a substantially larger monthly check for what could be decades. The couple captured income from both records during their shared years together, and the surviving spouse is protected by the maximized benefit going forward. Running this scenario as a combined household strategy, rather than optimizing each spouse independently, is exactly the kind of analysis that can be worth tens of thousands of dollars in lifetime benefits. It requires an honest conversation about health expectations, but for couples where one partner has clear longevity concerns, the math consistently favors this kind of coordinated approach. The fourth scenario surprises people because it applies to someone who looks on paper like exactly the person who should wait. You're 62. You've stopped working. You have a meaningful retirement portfolio, maybe $400,000, maybe significantly more. The standard advice says people with assets can afford to wait, so they should. The actual math sometimes says the opposite. Here's the mechanism. When you retire and stop earning a paycheck, your portfolio becomes your income source. Every dollar you pull out to cover living expenses is a dollar that stops compounding. If you claim Social Security early and use those payments to cover a portion of your monthly costs, you reduce how much you need to withdraw from your investments. Your portfolio stays larger for longer. The growth on that additional invested capital over 8 years can, in the right circumstances, exceed the additional benefit you would have gained by delaying your Social Security claim. You're essentially trading a guaranteed benefit increase for a larger investment base. And whether that trade pays off depends on your expected returns, your portfolio size, and how long you live. There's a second dimension here that financial planners call sequence of returns risk. If the market drops sharply in the early years of your retirement while you're withdrawing heavily from your portfolio, the damage is disproportionate and often permanent. A 30% market decline when your portfolio is large and you're pulling from it aggressively can set back your long-term financial position far more than the math of an average return would suggest. Having Social Security income coming in, even a reduced early benefit, shrinks the amount you need to withdraw during those vulnerable early years. It acts as a buffer between your portfolio and a bad market at exactly the wrong time. Now, one practical concern that often goes unaddressed here is healthcare. If you retire at 62, you're 3 years away from Medicare eligibility at 65. That gap needs a plan. COBRA coverage from a former employer can run anywhere from $700 to over $1,500 a month for a single person, and it only lasts 18 months. The better solution for many early retirees is the Affordable Care Act marketplace. When your wage income drops to zero and your primary income becomes a modest Social Security check, your adjusted gross income can fall low enough to qualify for substantial premium tax credits. If you're drawing primarily from cash savings or Roth assets rather than traditional pre-tax accounts, you can manage your reported income carefully and access quality coverage at a fraction of the sticker price. For some early retirees, that combination of reduced Social Security income plus careful asset management produces surprisingly affordable health insurance right up until Medicare takes over at 65. The healthcare gap is real, but it's a solvable problem with the right planning. The fifth scenario is related, but distinct. Some people claim early not because they need the income for expenses, but because they intend to invest the payments directly into the market. The logic is straightforward. 8 additional years of Social Security checks, even at the reduced rate, represents a substantial sum of money. If you invest those payments consistently and generate returns that exceed roughly 7 to 8% annually, the accumulated invested balance can eventually outperform the larger monthly check you would have received by waiting. This is a more aggressive strategy than simply using Social Security to reduce portfolio withdrawals, and it carries real risk. The market does not return 8% every year on a reliable schedule. Some years it returns 25%. Other years it loses 15 or 20. If you invest your early Social Security payments and the market delivers a poor decade, you've made a straight trade. You gave up a guaranteed benefit increase for speculative returns that didn't materialize. For experienced investors who understand that dynamic, who have a long track record of staying disciplined through volatility, and who genuinely don't need the Social Security income for daily expenses, this approach can be a legitimate part of a broader investment strategy. For someone without that experience or emotional discipline, it usually isn't. The sixth scenario applies to people who already have another guaranteed income stream locked in for the future. A pension that begins at 65. A deferred income annuity purchased years ago that starts paying at 67. A structured settlement with a defined start date. If you know that a reliable, inflation-resistant income floor is coming in a few years, you don't need Social Security to build that floor. You've already built it. In that situation, claiming Social Security early solves a specific problem. It covers the gap years between when you stop working and when your other income begins. The money you collect from 62 to 65 or 67 bridges you through those transitional years without requiring large portfolio withdrawals. Once the pension or annuity activates, your combined income likely exceeds your needs anyway, and Social Security becomes a supplement rather than a foundation. One important clarification for anyone with a public sector pension: if you worked as a teacher, police officer, firefighter, or in any government role where you did not pay Social Security taxes, your situation is different. The windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset are two rules that can significantly reduce your Social Security benefit or your spousal benefit when a non-covered pension is involved. Standard private sector pensions and military retirement pay do not trigger these provisions, but public servants who split careers between covered and non-covered employment need to verify their specific numbers with the Social Security Administration before making any filing decision, because the generic math simply does not apply to them. The seventh scenario is the one that gets discussed least in financial media, probably because it's the most human. You plan to work until 65 or 67. Your body or your industry had other plans. Decades of physical work take a toll that a spreadsheet doesn't capture. Construction, nursing, manufacturing, agriculture. These careers extract a physical cost that compounds over time. And for many workers, the honest reality at 62 is that continuing simply is not possible. The same is true for workers who were displaced by layoffs and found that re-entering the job market in their early 60s meant confronting age discrimination that is illegal on paper and pervasive in practice. If you have genuinely exhausted the alternatives and you cannot generate adequate income through work, Social Security exists precisely for this moment. Using it is not a failure of planning. It is the system functioning exactly as it was designed to function. There's also a rule buried inside the Social Security system that almost nobody talks about, and it directly affects anyone in the seventh category who might still be doing occasional work after filing early. Most people assume that if they claim at 62 and then earn above the annual limit, they've permanently lost whatever benefits get withheld. They think the reduction is simply gone. That assumption is wrong. Here's how it actually works. In 2026, if you're under full retirement age and collecting Social Security, you can earn up to $24,480 annually without any impact on your benefits. Earn above that threshold, and Social Security withholds $1 for every $2 you earn over the limit. That sounds punishing. But when you reach full retirement age at 67, the Social Security Administration recalculates your benefit. They look at every month during which a full benefit payment was withheld because of excess earnings, and they credit you for those months. Your monthly benefit is permanently adjusted upward to reflect the fact that you effectively delayed receiving those payments. The money wasn't confiscated. It was deferred, and it comes back to you in the form of a larger monthly check for the rest of your life. Think of it less as a penalty and more as a forced savings mechanism that pays out at 67. For someone who files early out of necessity, but then finds part-time work that pushes above the earnings limit, this recalculation means the financial damage is far less permanent than most people fear. Now, let's be equally direct about the situations where filing at 62 is a genuine mistake, because the 7 legitimate reasons above do not apply to everyone. If you are still working and earning a meaningful income, filing early is almost certainly the wrong move. The earnings limit of $24,480 is not a high bar for someone with a solid professional salary. If you earn $60,000 or $80,000 a year and file at 62, you've accepted a permanent 30% benefit reduction and then had your payments withheld on top of that because your income exceeds the threshold. You've damaged your long-term benefit for essentially no short-term gain. The recalculation at 67 will partially repair the withheld portion, but the underlying permanent reduction from early filing stays in place. There's almost no scenario where this combination makes financial sense. If Social Security will be your primary source of income in retirement, the calculus shifts sharply toward waiting. When the gap between $2,660 a month and $4,700 a month represents the difference between financial stability and genuine hardship, every year you can extend your working life or draw from savings instead of filing early is worth serious effort. The monthly benefit difference becomes more consequential, not less, the more you depend on it. Work longer if your health and employment situation allow. Draw from savings as a bridge if necessary. The return on waiting is highest precisely for the people who need Social Security the most. And if your family history reads like a longevity advertisement, grandparents who lived into their 90s, parents still active in their 80s, your own clean bill of health at 62, the actuarial math is working against early filing. You are statistically likely to cross the break-even point and then live well past it. Every year of delayed filing in that scenario is a compounding advantage that plays out over a potentially very long retirement. There's one more dimension to this decision that rarely gets adequate attention. Social Security is not a single lever with two positions. When you factor in spousal benefits, survivor benefits, divorced spouse benefits, and the various timing combinations available to married couples, there are hundreds of distinct filing strategies available to any given household. The simple break-even comparison between claiming at 62 and claiming at 70 is a useful starting point, but it captures only a fraction of what's actually on the table. Your personal situation almost certainly involves considerations that a generic formula cannot account for. The age gap between you and your spouse, the earnings difference between your records, the health outlook for each of you individually, your other income sources, and your tax situation all interact in ways that shift the optimal strategy from one household to the next. The Social Security Administration no longer hosts a dedicated break-even calculator on its website. The reasoning financial experts most frequently offer is that single variable break-even tools led too many people to make filing decisions based on an oversimplified metric that ignored the complexity of real financial lives. The tools that replaced it focus on broader benefit estimation rather than a single crossover age, which is a more honest representation of what this decision actually involves. So here's what a deliberate, informed process actually looks like. Start by logging into your Social Security account and pulling your benefit estimates at 62, 67, and 70. Know the specific dollar amounts you're working with, not rounded approximations. The actual numbers for your earnings history may differ meaningfully from any generic example. Second, assess your health with genuine honesty. Look at your family history. Consider your current conditions. The goal isn't pessimism, it's accuracy. A realistic life expectancy estimate is one of the most valuable inputs in this entire calculation, and most people avoid forming one because it's uncomfortable. Third, if you're married, model your household's total lifetime benefit under several different filing combinations, not just each spouse's individual optimization. The strategy that maximizes your personal monthly check is not always the strategy that maximizes your household's total lifetime income. Fourth, inventory your other income sources before you decide anything. A pension, a deferred annuity, significant retirement savings, rental income. These all change what Social Security needs to do for you in retirement. If Social Security is the floor that everything else rests on, protecting its long-term value by waiting carries more weight. If it's one piece of a diversified income picture, earlier filing may free up flexibility elsewhere. Fifth, if the interaction between all of these variables feels genuinely complex, a fee-only financial planner who specializes in retirement income can run a detailed analysis of your specific situation. The cost of a few hours of professional advice is modest relative to the potential impact of a well-optimized filing decision spread across a 20-plus year retirement. The average retirement age in America is 62. That number reflects millions of individual decisions made under millions of different circumstances, and dismissing all of them as mistakes misses the point entirely. Social Security is not a puzzle with one correct answer hidden inside the math. It's a decision shaped by who you are, what your health looks like, what your household needs, and what role this income will actually play in your retirement. The 7 scenarios we covered, unlocking spousal benefits, Accounting for realistic health history, coordinating survivor benefit strategy, reducing portfolio withdrawals, investing early payments, bridging to a future guaranteed income source, and filing out of genuine necessity. These are not rationalizations for impatience. They are the real strategic considerations that experienced financial planners work through when they sit down with actual clients in actual circumstances. Some of those clients should wait until 70. Some of them should file at 62. The right answer is the one that fits the life being lived, not the one that performs best in an idealized scenario built around an average person who doesn't exist. What matters most is that you make this decision with accurate information and honest self-assessment, rather than defaulting to a rule you heard somewhere that was designed for someone else. The permanent nature of the filing decision, in either direction, is exactly why it deserves serious, personalized attention before you act. The people who come out ahead are rarely the ones who followed the loudest conventional wisdom. They're the ones who understood their own numbers, their own health, and their own household well enough to make a deliberate choice. This is not financial advice, and your specific situation deserves the attention of a qualified professional who can work through the details with you directly. But whatever path you choose it with clarity. If this breakdown helped you think about Social Security and retirement timing in a more complete way, do me a favor and hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to put this analysis in front of more people who need to see it. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're uploading hidden financial files and career strategies every single day, breaking down the decisions that shape real financial outcomes for real people. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community spans the entire world, and every single location matters. Tell us where you are. Tell us if you're approaching this decision yourself, or if you're helping a parent or spouse think it through. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of a community that takes these decisions seriously. These are the lessons that deserve to be remembered, and you're the reason they reach the people who need them most.